Rebels are regrouping in towns in the east of the country. The military and pro-Gaddafi forces have, at least for the time being, halted their advance to the Libyan leader's hometown and stronghold of Sirte. A report on Libyan state TV showed pictures, it said, were of rebel fighters killed in battle. The man on the microphone describes the men as rats serving a foreign agenda. These pictures have emerged purportedly showing a battle on Sunday in the town of Misrata, about 100 kilometers east of Tripoli. The amateur cameraman describes what he says is the blood of mercenaries. He says the post office was bombed by fighter jets. Gaddafi has again blamed the foreign media for distorting facts.
We don't wonder who is behind the foreign media and what their interests are. We think of them as channels conspiring and twisting the facts intentionally. I do not know the aim of these channels and who benefits from this.
As his propaganda campaign continues, he still seems almost oblivious to the increasing amount of civilians injured and killed. These images of wounded children were reportedly filmed in a hospital in Misrata. It's impossible to know exactly how many civilians have been killed and wounded so far, but a break in the military standoff will bring yet more intense fighting, and whatever that figure actually is sure to steeply rise. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera has learnt that a firefight between British special forces and rebel fighters broke out on Libyan soil. It happened when a diplomat and members of the elite SAS military force were captured as they landed in eastern Libya, a failed mission that was personally authorized by the UK Foreign Minister William Hague. Al Jazeera's Huda Abdelhamid has more.
Well, yes, we do. According to our sources, when their helicopter landed south of Benghazi, it was during the thick of night, and I think they thought that they would go unnoticed then, but eventually they were received really by residents and rebels who basically heard the noise of the helicopter, and as they got off the helicopter, there was an exchange of gunfire between the two sides that lasted about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, we're told that the rebels really wanted to catch these people because they didn't know who was landing in the middle of the night like that. And on the other side, apparently they were trying not to hurt the rebels, not to get entangled into an even more difficult position. So apparently that gunfire lasted about 15 minutes until the rebels got hold of these 8 people.
When the uprising in Libya began, the message from opposition forces was clear. They would overthrow Muammar Gaddafi on their own. That tune has changed. In the last 24 hours, they've begun to call for outside help against Gaddafi's air power. Gulf Arab leaders are also throwing their weight behind the idea, asking for a UN-enforced no-fly zone. Well, for more on that, let's cross to our Washington, D.C. news center with Shihab. Shihab?
Thanks, Imran. And US President Obama does say Washington and its NATO allies are still considering a military response to the crisis in Libya. Speaking alongside the Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, on Monday at the White House, Obama again called the violence in Libya, quote, unacceptable.
I want to send a very clear message to those who are around Colonel Gaddafi. It is their choice to make how they operate moving forward, and they will be held accountable for whatever violence continues to take place there. In the meantime, we've got NATO, as we speak, consulting in Brussels around a wide range of potential options, including potential military options, in response to the violence that continues to take place inside of Libya.
John Terrett will soon join us with some analysis on that, as politicians from both Obama's Democratic Party and opposition Republicans have been calling on him to take more concrete action, President Obama, to deal with the crisis in Libya. John Terrett now joins us. I mean, the thing is, we've heard these statements from President Obama in the past. Are we seeing any solidifying to an actual position on what to do?
Well, a little bit, I think. Not much, it has to be said, because I don't think the US government is particularly in any rush. They have the luxury of waiting for the international community to make up its mind before they really come out of their corner. But I think the significance of President Obama's comments today were that he raised the issue of NATO without a question from a journalist. And that meeting that he referred to in the clip that you just played was taking place at the time he was talking and it's going to roll on through the week, culminating in a meeting in Brussels on Thursday of NATO defence ministers and secretaries. And so I think there's a sort of time frame that we all now can work to. Clearly, this White House and other governments around the world, key players, are working now at least till Thursday, so we can all look to see what happens on Thursday. Shortly after the president spoke, the NATO ambassador from the United States gave a briefing, and he explained what the meeting on Monday and the one on Thursday will focus on. In this order, it's going to be gathering assets for the humanitarian response, also exploring how to maintain the arms embargo against Libya, and only then, if there's a desire around the table, will they look at the issue of a no-fly zone. But he did go on to say that if the Gaddafi regime continues with its aerial attacks, specifically the use of jets, not helicopters, then it's likely that they will discuss the issue of a no-fly zone on Thursday. But he said that all members around that table will want a resolution out of the United Nations first before they do that. And as we know, Shihab, that's going to be notoriously difficult to achieve, with the Russians, who have a veto in the Security Council, saying that basically Libya has to sort out its own problems. Shihab.
The other idea circulating in Washington then is arming either covertly or overtly the rebels. Yeah. Is that gaining any traction?
Well, sort of. I mean, it was knocked down a bit today. This came about from the major political Sunday broadcast, when two very, very senior politicians, one from the Democratic side, one from the Republican side, started talking about the issue of arming the rebels either covertly or openly. Now, today, PJ Crowley, who is the senior spokesperson at the State Department, began to push back on this a little bit, saying that there is a United Nations Security Council resolution in place, number 1970, which forbids the selling of arms to Libya or the giving of arms to Libya, so therefore the United States will not be doing it. Here's more of how he couched it this lunchtime here in Washington.
The UN Security Council resolution passed on Libya, there is an arms embargo that affects Libya, which means it's a violation for any country to provide arms to anyone in Libya.
Now, with all due respect to PJ Crowley, there are those who say that, well, even though he's saying that, there is a history of the United States government saying stuff like that, but going ahead and arming rebels right around the world anyway. So we'll have to see what happens. One other thing, he also pushed back on the idea of distributing the $30 billion of Gaddafi family money, which the US froze last week. He said that will be up to a future Libyan government. Shihab.
John Terrett of the White House, thank you. Al Jazeera has confirmed, meanwhile, that the French and British missions to the UN are working on a draft resolution that could lead to the creation of a no-fly zone over Libya. Earlier, a US government spokesman said it would support the move. On Monday, too, the group of 6 Gulf Arab states, known as the Gulf Cooperation Council, issued a statement calling on the Security Council to, quote, protect Libyan civilians, including through a no-fly zone, end quote. For more, let's go to Scott Heidler, who's at the UN. Scott, preparing a draft resolution is different, of course, to presenting a resolution to the UN Security Council. What can you tell us about the time frame?
Exactly, Shihab, and we are in that preparing stage, if you will. We spoke with both British and French diplomats to the Security Council, and they're telling us, and this is the way they couched it, that from before they present a draft resolution to the Security Council, it's way too early.